Captain Alara Vance stood on the bridge of her patrol ship, the Defiant, watching the stars pass by through the main window. She was 32 years old, with sharp eyes and dark hair pulled back tight. Behind her, the crew worked quietly at their stations. Guiding the ship through the empty space of the outer reach, it was a boring mission. They were escorting a diplomatic convoy carrying ambassadors from 4 different alien species. The aliens belonged to the Galactic Concord, a powerful alliance of 12 species that had controlled this part of the galaxy for thousands of years. Humans had only joined galactic society 100 years ago, and the Concord still treated them like children who did not belong at the adult table. Alara did not like the ambassadors. She did not trust them, but she followed her orders and kept her thoughts to herself. Her mind drifted to an old memory. When she was a little girl, her grandmother used to tell her stories about a ship called the Prometheus. It was humanity's first great colony vessel, built to carry 12,000 people to a new world far from Earth. 50 years ago, the Prometheus had launched with hope and dreams. It never arrived. The ship vanished somewhere in the Kepler Passage. No one ever found it. The Concorde had said the ship was destroyed by space anomalies. They said there was nothing anyone could do. They offered no help in the search. Alara's grandmother had been on that ship. She never got to meet her. A sudden alarm pulled Alara from her thoughts. Red lights flashed across the bridge. Her sensor officer, a young man named Torres, looked up with wide eyes. "Captain," he said, his voice shaking, "we have something on the sensors." Something big. Lara walked to his station and looked at the screen. A ship was emerging from uncharted space, coming through a region where no ship should be. It was massive, larger than anything she had ever seen. The readings made no sense. "What is that?" she asked. Torres typed quickly, running the ship's signature through every database they had. Then he stopped. His face went pale. "Captain," he whispered, "the signature matches the UES Prometheus." Alara felt the world tilt beneath her feet. That was impossible. The Prometheus had been gone for 50 years. Everyone on board was dead. Everyone said so. But there it was on her screen. The same ship. The same signature. Except it was different now. The Prometheus she had seen in old pictures was sleek and beautiful, built for carrying families to a new home. This ship was covered in strange metal and glowing technology that she did not recognize. It was 3 times larger than before, wrapped in armor and power that seemed almost alive. The communications officer spoke next. "Captain, the ship is broadcasting a message. It is going out on all frequencies, in every known language." "Put it through," Alara ordered. The bridge fell silent as a voice filled the room. It was calm and cold, carrying weight that pressed down on everyone who heard it. "We remember what you did. We have returned, and we are no longer alone," the message repeated. Again and again. The same words in human languages, in alien tongues, in codes and signals that spread across the entire sector. Alara turned to look at the diplomatic convoy behind her ship. Through the window, she could see the alien vessels. They had stopped moving. On the Defiant's communication screen, she could see the faces of the Concorde ambassadors. They looked terrified. Ambassador Varath, of the Cretheon species, was the first to speak. His gray skin had turned almost white. "This cannot be," he said. "This is impossible. That ship was destroyed." "Clearly it was not," Alara replied. Her voice was steady, but her heart was racing. "What do you know about this, Ambassador?" Vorath did not answer. He looked at the other ambassadors, and something passed between them. Secret. A shared fear. "Captain Vance," another ambassador said quickly, "you must destroy that ship immediately. It is a threat to all of us." Alara stared at them. "Destroy it?" "That ship is carrying human survivors. People who have been lost for 50 years. You do not understand," Vorath insisted. "That ship is dangerous. Whatever's on board is not what you think. You must act now before it is too late." But Alara was not listening anymore. She was watching the Prometheus on her screen. The ship had not fired a single weapon. It had not made any aggressive moves. It simply waited in the darkness, broadcasting its message to the stars. "We remember what you did." Those words echoed in her mind. What had the Concorde done? What were they so afraid of? Her communication officer interrupted her thoughts. "Captain, we are receiving direct contact from the Prometheus. They are asking to speak with the highest-ranking human officer in the area." Alara took a deep breath. Her orders were to protect the convoy. Her duty was to follow the chain of command. But her grandmother's face floated in her memory, smiling and warm, lost forever on a ship that everyone said was gone. "Open a channel," she said. The screen flickered and a face appeared. It was a human man, older but strong, with gray at his temples and eyes that had seen too much. He wore a uniform she did not recognize, marked with symbols that mixed human design with something alien and ancient. "I am Commander Marcus Chen of the Prometheus," the man said. "We have traveled a very long way to be here. We have much to tell you, Captain. The truth about what happened to us, the truth about why we disappeared, and the truth about what your allies in the Concorde really did." Lara glanced at the ambassadors on her screen. They were shouting now, demanding she cut the communication, ordering her to open fire. But she ignored them. "I am listening," she said to Commander Chen. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Only the cold satisfaction of someone who had waited 50 years for this moment. 50 years ago, the Galactic Concorde tried to murder 12,000 innocent humans. They failed. And now, Captain Vance, we have come home to make sure the galaxy never forgets what they did. The bridge of the Defiant was completely silent. Alara felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. She understood now that everything she thought she knew was a lie, and the real story was only beginning. Behind her, the ambassadors continued to scream, but Alara did not hear them anymore. Her eyes were fixed on the impossible ship floating in the darkness. Carrying ghosts who had finally returned to demand answers, she made her decision. "Commander Chen," she said, "I want to know everything." The shuttle crossed the dark space between the Defiant and the Prometheus. Captain Alara Vance sat alone in the small vessel, watching the massive ship grow larger through her window. Behind her, the Concorde ambassadors had threatened her with everything they could imagine. They promised to end her career. They warned of war. But Alara had stopped listening hours ago. Something terrible had happened 50 years ago. She needed to know what it was. The Prometheus opened its docking bay like a giant mouth, and her shuttle slipped inside. The technology around her was strange and beautiful. Lights glowed in colors she had never seen before. The walls seemed almost alive, shifting and responding to movement. This was not human technology. This was something far beyond anything the Concorde possessed. Commander Marcus was waiting for her when she stepped off the shuttle. He was tall and calm, with the posture of a man who had carried heavy burdens for a very long time. Beside him stood others in similar uniforms, men and women of different ages, all watching Alara with curious eyes. "Welcome aboard the Prometheus," Chen said. "I know you have many questions. Please, walk with me." They moved through the corridors of the ship. Alara saw families living in comfortable quarters. She saw children playing in open spaces filled with strange plants. She saw old people sitting together, talking and laughing. These were not soldiers or conquerors. These were survivors. Generations of them. 12,000 people launched on the Prometheus, Chen explained as they walked. "When we were attacked, we lost nearly 3,000 in the first hour. The rest of us survived, but our ship was crippled. We drifted through space, dying slowly, until we fell through an unstable wormhole." "Attacked?" Alara asked. "By who?" Chen stopped walking. He turned to face her, and his eyes were filled with old pain. "By the Galactic Concorde," he said. 6 of their warships were waiting for us in the Kepler passage. They opened fire without warning, without communication, without mercy. They tried to kill every man, woman, and child on this ship. Alara felt sick. She wanted to deny it, to argue that the Concorde would never do such a thing. But she remembered the fear on the ambassadors' faces. She remembered how they had demanded she destroy the Prometheus without asking questions. Why? She asked, "Why would they do this?" Chen began walking again, leading her to a large room filled with screens and controls. Humanity was growing too fast. In 100 years, we went from a primitive species to a spacefaring civilization. We adapted to new technology faster than any species the Concorde had ever seen. We asked too many questions. We challenged their ways. They saw us as a threat to their power. He touched a control panel, and the screens lit up with images. Ilara saw the Prometheus as it had been 50 years ago, beautiful and full of hope. Then she saw the attack. Concorde warships appearing from hiding, weapons firing, hull breaches tearing the colony ship apart. She heard the screams of thousands of innocent people, and she saw the faces of the Concorde commanders giving the orders. Species she recognized. Allies she had been taught to trust. The Concorde voted in secret to eliminate humanity's expansion, Chen continued. They chose the Prometheus because it was far from Earth, carrying civilians who would not be missed immediately. They planned to blame the destruction on natural causes. Space anomalies. A tragic accident. Tears burned in Ilar's eyes. My grandmother was on this ship. Chen nodded slowly. I know, I have read the passenger records. Maria Vance. She was a teacher. She died protecting her students during the attack. He paused. I am sorry. Ilara wiped her eyes. Grief and anger fought inside her chest, but she forced herself to focus. How did you survive? How did you become this? Chen led her to a window that looked out at the stars. But these were not the stars Ilara knew. They were different, arranged in patterns she did not recognize. The wormhole threw us into another galaxy, Chen said. We were stranded, dying with no hope of return. And then we met the architects. The architects? An ancient civilization, older than any species in the Concorde. They have watched younger races rise and fall for millions of years. They found us drifting in space, and they saw something in humanity that interested them. Our creativity, our stubbornness, our refusal to die even when everything was lost. Chen smiled for the first time, and there was warmth in it now. They took us in. They taught us. They shared their technology and their knowledge. For 50 years, we learned and grew. The children born on this ship have never known Earth, but they know what humanity can become when given the chance. Ilara looked around at the incredible technology surrounding her. The architects gave you all of this? They helped us build it. We earned it through hard work and dedication. And now we have returned, not as refugees begging for mercy, but as equals to any power in the galaxy. Lara understood the weight of what he was saying. The Prometheus was no longer a lost colony ship. It was a statement, a warning, and a promise. What do you want? She asked. Revenge? War? Chen shook his head. If we wanted war, we would have started firing the moment we arrived. We have weapons that could reduce Concorde worlds to ash. But that is not why we came. He turned to face her fully, his expression serious. We came for justice. The Concorde must answer for what they did, not through violence, but through law. There is a place called the Chamber of Arbitration, a court so old and respected that even the architects honor its decisions. We will take the Concorde before the arbiters. We will present our evidence. And we will let the galaxy see the truth. Lara felt hope rising in her chest. This was not about destruction. This was about making things right. Concorde will never agree to that, she said. They will have no choice. The arbiters have already accepted our request. The trial will happen. Chen placed a hand on her shoulder. But we need humanity to stand with us. Not the Concorde's version of humanity. The quiet species that accepts whatever they are told. The real humanity. The one that survived against impossible odds and refused to be forgotten. Lara thought of her grandmother, dying to protect children she barely knew. She thought of the 12,000 souls who had launched into the stars with dreams of a better future. She thought of 50 years of lies. What do you need me to do? She asked. Chen smiled. Go back to your ship. Tell your people the truth. And when the time comes, speak for us before the arbiters. Speak for your grandmother. Speak for everyone the Concorde tried to silence. Lara stood straight. For the first time in her life, she felt like she understood her purpose. I will, she promised. I will make sure the galaxy knows what happened here. Commander Chen nodded. Then let us begin. The Concord has hidden their crimes for 50 years. That ends now. Beside the window, the stars of a distant galaxy shimmered with ancient light, and somewhere in the darkness, justice was finally beginning to wake. The truth spread across human space like fire across dry grass. Commander Chen and the Prometheus broadcast everything. The recordings of the attack. The voices of Concord commanders ordering the deaths of civilians. The secret votes that had condemned 12,000 innocent people. Every human world received the transmission at the same moment. Every screen, every device. Every communication system carried the evidence of what had been done 50 years ago. Captain Alara Vance watched from the bridge of the Defiant as the galaxy changed forever. On Earth, billions of people stopped what they were doing to watch the recordings. They saw the Prometheus torn apart by weapons fire. They heard the screams. They watched children die in the cold vacuum of space. And they learned that their trusted allies, the species who had welcomed humanity into galactic society, had tried to murder them in secret. The reaction was immediate. But it was not chaos. It was something far more dangerous. It was cold, unified anger. Human governments demanded answers. Military forces went on high alert. Trade agreements were suspended. Diplomatic channels went silent. For the first time in history, every human nation, every colony, every outpost in space stood together as one people. They did not scream or riot. They simply waited, watching the Concord with hard eyes, demanding to know what would happen next. The Concord ambassadors aboard Alira's convoy tried to flee. Their ships turned and ran toward their own space, ignoring all communications. But they did not get far. Human patrol ships blocked their path, not attacking, just waiting. The message was clear. No one was leaving until there were answers, Ambassador. Varoth finally agreed to speak with Alara. His face appeared on her screen. Gray and tired, looking older than he had just days before. Captain Vance, he said. You must understand this was not our decision. This happened 50 years ago. The leaders who made that choice are long dead. Why should we pay for their sins? Alara stared at him without sympathy. You knew. You all knew. Every member of the Concord has hidden this secret for 50 years. You watched humanity mourn their dead while you pretended to be our friends. Vorath had no answer. He lowered his eyes and said nothing, but not all of the Concord remained silent. Within hours of the broadcast, 3 species broke away from the Alliance. The Valoran, the Tassari, and the Mundari had opposed the attack 50 years ago. They had been silenced, threatened, forced to keep the secret. Now they stepped forward and told their own stories. Ambassador the Zara of the Valoran appeared on screens across the galaxy. She was old, her scales faded with age, but her voice was strong. My people voted against the attack on the Prometheus, she said. We were told that if we spoke, our world would face the same fate. For 50 years, we have carried this shame in silence. No more. The Valorans stand with humanity. We will testify to everything we know. The Tessari and Mundari made similar announcements. The Concord, which had stood united for thousands of years, began to crack and crumble. Old alliances fell apart. Secret agreements were exposed. Species that had pretended to be partners now accused each other of terrible crimes. Commander. Chen watched all of this from the Prometheus. He had expected resistance. He had prepared for war. But this was better than war. This was the Concord destroying itself from within. He contacted Alara on a private channel. It is time, he said. The arbiters have confirmed the trial. We will present our case in the Chamber of Arbitration in 30 days. Alara nodded. I have spoken with human leadership. They have agreed to participate, but they want to know who will speak for humanity. Chen was quiet for a moment. I have thought about this carefully. It cannot be me. I am too close to what happened. My anger is too personal. We need someone who can speak with clarity and emotion without losing control. Who did you have in mind? You, Captain Vance. Ilara felt her heart stop. Me. I am just a patrol captain. I have no authority to speak for all of humanity. You have something more important, Chen said. You have a personal connection to this tragedy. Your grandmother died on the Prometheus. You represent the families who lost everything, and you discovered the truth. You defied the Concord ambassadors when they ordered you to destroy us. You chose truth over orders. Ilara wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. The trial would not be about politics or power. It would be about justice for the dead. And she carried those dead in her heart every day. What if I fail? She asked quietly. You will not fail, Chen assured her, because you are fighting for something real. The Concord built their alliance on lies and fear. They have never faced someone who simply told the truth. That is their weakness, and it is your strength. Ilara took a deep breath. She thought of her grandmother, who had died protecting students she barely knew. She thought of the children who never got to grow up, the families who never got to build new homes, the dreams that were burned away in the cold darkness of space. I will do it, she said. I will speak for them. Across human space, preparations began. Evidence was gathered. Testimonies were recorded. The 3 species who had broken from the Concord shared their own records, adding more proof to an already overwhelming case. But the remaining Concord members did not surrender quietly. They held emergency meetings trying to build a defense. They claimed the attack was justified because humanity was a threat. They argued that the leaders who made the decision were dead and could not be punished. They insisted the whole thing was exaggerated. None of it worked. The evidence was too clear. The truth was too powerful. On the day before the trial was scheduled to begin, something unexpected happened. A message arrived from beyond known space, from the architects themselves. They had remained silent since the Prometheus returned, watching from their distant galaxy. Now they spoke. Their message was simple. We will attend the trial. We wish to see how the younger races handle justice. The galaxy held its breath. The architects had not visited this part of the universe in thousands of years. Their presence meant that whatever happened in the Chamber of Arbitration would be remembered forever. Captain Ilara Vance stood on the bridge of the Defiant, preparing for the journey to the chamber. She was afraid. She was uncertain. But she was also determined. 50 years ago, the Concord had tried to silence humanity forever. They had failed. And now, in the oldest court in the universe, humanity would finally have the chance to speak. Ilara looked at the stars and made a quiet promise to the grandmother she had never met. I will not let them forget you, she whispered. I will make sure the whole galaxy hears your story. The Defiant jumped to light speed, carrying her toward the trial that would change everything. The Chamber of Arbitration existed outside normal space, in a place where the laws of physics bent to older rules. Captain Ilara Vance felt her stomach turn as her ship passed through the gateway. One moment they were traveling through the stars she knew. The next moment they were somewhere else entirely. In a realm of soft golden light and impossible geometry, the chamber itself was vast beyond understanding. It was built from materials that seemed to shift between solid and liquid, glowing with colors that had no names. Platforms floated in the endless space, each one carrying representatives from different species. Thousands had come to witness the trial, perhaps millions. Ilara could not count them all. At the center of the chamber sat the arbiters. They were beings so ancient that looking at them made Ilara's eyes hurt. They existed in multiple states at once, sometimes appearing as tall figures made of light, sometimes as abstract shapes that defied description. They had watched civilizations rise and fall since before the first stars burned. They had seen everything. They judged everything. And today, they would judge the Galactic Concord. Ilara took her place on the human platform. Behind her stood Commander Chen and the survivors of the Prometheus. Beside them stood representatives from every human world, united for the first time in their history. On nearby platforms, the Valoran Tessari, a Mondari, waited to offer their testimony. Across the chamber, the remaining Concord species gathered in uncomfortable silence. They had sent their best speakers, their most skilled politicians, but they looked small in this ancient place. Like children called before their parents to explain what they had done wrong, the lead arbiter spoke, and its voice filled the chamber without sound. Entering directly into the minds of everyone present, we are gathered to hear the case of humanity against the Galactic Concord. The accusation is attempted genocide, conspiracy, and suppression of truth. Let the prosecution speak. Ilara stepped forward. Her legs trembled, but she forced herself to stand tall. Millions of eyes watched her. The weight of history pressed down on her shoulders. But she remembered why she was here. She remembered the faces of the dead. 50 years ago, she began, her voice carrying across the impossible space. A ship called the Prometheus left Earth. It carried 12,000 people. Families who dreamed of building a new home among the stars. They were teachers and doctors, farmers and engineers, parents and children. They had done nothing wrong. They threatened no one. She paused, letting her words settle. The Galactic Concord murdered them. Not in war. Not in self-defense. They killed them because they were afraid. Afraid of what humanity might become. Afraid of losing their power. Afraid of a species that grew too fast and asked too many questions. The chamber was completely silent. Ilara felt the attention of the arbiters focused on her like the heat of a distant sun. The Concord claims they are civilized. They claim they stand for peace and cooperation. But I will show you what they really are. She activated the evidence displays that Commander Chen had prepared. Images filled the chamber, surrounding everyone present with the truth. The Prometheus before the attack, bright and beautiful. The Concord warships emerging from hiding, the weapons firing without warning. The hull breaches, the bodies floating in space, and the audio. The voices of Concord commanders laughing as they destroyed an unarmed ship. The screams of the dying, the silence that followed. Many in the chamber turned away. Some wept. Even some of the Concord representatives looked sick with shame. Ilara continued. 3,000 people died in the first hour. The rest survived only because of luck and courage. They fell through a wormhole and were lost to this galaxy. The Concord told humanity it was an accident. They offered sympathy while hiding the blood on their hands. She called the first witness. Commander Chen stepped forward and told his story. He described the attack, the desperate fight for survival, the years of exile in a distant galaxy. He spoke of the children who grew up never knowing Earth, of the old people who died waiting to see home again. Then came the survivors. One by one, they stepped forward and told their stories. A woman who had been a child during the attack described watching her parents die. A man showed scars from injuries he had received that day. An old woman recited the names of every person who had died, all 3,000 of them. A list that took nearly an hour to complete. The chamber listened in silence. Even the arbiters seemed moved, their abstract forms flickering with something that might have been emotion. Then the Valoran ambassador testified. She presented records from 50 years ago, communications between Concord leaders discussing the attack. The votes were there, the arguments for murder. The cold calculations of species who decided that 12,000 lives were worth less than their own comfort. The Tassari and Mundari added their own evidence. Secret meetings. Threats made to keep them silent. A culture of fear and control that had lasted for thousands of years. By the time the prosecution finished, the case was overwhelming. The evidence was undeniable. The truth was clear. The Concord's defense was weak and desperate. Their speakers argued that the attack happened long ago. The leaders responsible were dead, that humanity had been a genuine threat. They claimed the recordings were fake, that the witnesses were lying. This was all a conspiracy against them. No one believed them. Their own former allies had testified against them. Their own records condemned them. The arbiters deliberated for 3 days. During that time, no one left the chamber. No one spoke. Everyone waited, wondering what would happen next. When the arbiters finally returned their verdict, the lead arbiter's voice filled every mind in the chamber. We have reviewed all evidence and testimony. Our judgment is unanimous. The Galactic Concord is guilty of attempted genocide, conspiracy to commit murder, suppression of truth, and crimes against sentient life. The chamber erupted in noise. The Concord representatives shouted protests. The human delegation embraced each other with tears of relief, but the arbiter was not finished. The Galactic Concord is hereby dissolved. All treaties and agreements made under its authority are void. The guilty species will pay reparations to humanity over the next 1,000 years. And humanity is recognized as a sovereign power with full standing in galactic affairs, equal to any civilization in the known universe. Ilara felt tears running down her face. She had done it. They had done it. After 50 years, justice had finally been served, but she knew this was not the end. The galaxy was watching to see what humanity would do with their victory. Would they seek revenge? Would they become the oppressors they had once suffered under? She looked at Commander Chen. He nodded slowly, understanding her thoughts. The trial was over. But the true test was just beginning. The galaxy held its breath. Every species, every world, every being with access to a communication device waited to see what humanity would do next. The Concord had been found guilty. Their alliance was dissolved. Humanity had every right to take revenge. To use the advanced technology of the Prometheus to burn the worlds of those who had tried to destroy them. Many expected war. Some hoped for it. The former Concord species retreated to their home systems and prepared for attacks that seemed inevitable. They armed their fleets and fortified their planets. They had seen what the Prometheus could do. They knew they could not win a fight. All they could do was wait and hope that the end would be quick. Captain Ilara Vance stood on a platform in the Chamber of Arbitration, looking out at the gathered representatives of hundreds of species. Commander Chen stood beside her. Behind them, the survivors of the Prometheus watched in silence. The arbiters waited to witness whatever came next. Ilara felt the weight of the moment pressing against her chest. She had spoken for humanity during the trial. Now she had been asked to speak for humanity again, to announce their decision. The words she was about to say would echo through history forever. She stepped forward and began to speak. 50 years ago, the Galactic Concord tried to destroy us. They killed 3,000 innocent people in cold blood. They lied about it for half a century. They treated humanity like a disease that needed to be cured before it spread too far. Her voice was steady, carrying across the impossible space of the chamber. We have every right to revenge. We have the power to take it. The technology we brought back from the architects could reduce entire worlds to dust. We could make the guilty species suffer the way our people suffered. We could teach the galaxy to fear humanity forever. The chamber was completely silent. Representatives from the former Concord species lowered their heads, preparing for the sentence they believed they deserved. Then Ilara smiled, and her voice softened. But we will not do that. Confused murmurs spread through the chamber. The former Concord representatives looked up with disbelief in their eyes. Commander. Chen stepped forward to stand beside Ilara. 50 years ago we were victims, he said. We were hurt and angry and afraid. If we had found a way to return immediately after the attack, we might have sought revenge. We might have become exactly what the Concord feared we would become. He paused, letting his words sink in. But we had 50 years to think, 50 years to grow, 50 years to learn from the architects and from ourselves. And we realized something important. Revenge would not bring back the dead. War would not heal our wounds. Becoming conquerors would only prove that the Concord was right to fear us, Ilara continued. The Concord attacked us because they were afraid of what we might become. They were right to see our potential, but wrong about what it meant. Humanity's potential is not for destruction. It is for creation, for growth, for building something better than what came before. She looked directly at the representatives of the guilty species. They flinched under her gaze, but she did not speak with anger. We do not forgive what you did. We will never forget the lives you stole. But we will not become monsters to punish monsters. Instead, we offer you something you never offered us. A choice. Commander Chen activated a display that showed a document filled with text in dozens of languages. We call it the Prometheus Compact, a new alliance built on different principles than the Concord, not based on fear or domination, but on cooperation and mutual growth, Ilara explained further. The technology we brought back from the architects will be shared with any species willing to join. Medical advances that can extend lives and cure diseases. Energy sources that are clean and endless. Ships that can travel farther and faster than anything currently known. All of this will be available to everyone. The chamber erupted in noise. This was impossible. No species shared such advantages. Power was hoarded, not given away. There are conditions, Chen added. Members of the compact must commit to peace. They must respect the rights of all sentient beings. They must be honest in their dealings with each other. And they must never, ever try to suppress or destroy another species simply because they are different or because they grow too fast. Alara looked around the chamber at the thousands of watching faces. The Concord was built on the idea that some species are better than others, that the strong should control the weak. That fear is the only way to maintain order. The Prometheus Compact rejects all of this. We believe that every species has value, that cooperation serves everyone better than competition, that the galaxy is big enough for all of us. She straightened her shoulders and spoke her final words with quiet strength. You tried to destroy us because you feared what we might become. You were right to fear, but not for the reasons you imagined. We did not become conquerors. We became something better, something you never expected. We became the people who could have taken revenge but chose not to. We became the people who offer friendship instead of war. The arbiters had been silent throughout the announcement. Now the lead arbiter spoke, its voice filling every mind in the chamber. In all our years of watching younger races, we have never witnessed this. Justice served without cruelty. Power held without corruption. This is unprecedented. The ancient being seemed to consider for a long moment before continuing. The architects were right to see potential in humanity. You have proven yourselves worthy of standing among the great civilizations of this universe. May your compact flourish. One by one, species began to join. The Valoran were first, then the Tessari and Mondari. Within hours, dozens more had signed the compact. Even some of the guilty species, humbled and grateful for mercy they had not expected, asked to be included. Within a year, the Prometheus Compact had grown larger than the Concord had ever been. Within a decade, it had transformed the galaxy. Technology was shared freely. Wars ended. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years learned to work together. The Prometheus itself returned to Earth and took its place in orbit, a permanent reminder of humanity's darkest hour and brightest choice. It became a museum and a memorial, a place where people from all species could come to learn about what had happened and why humanity had chosen mercy over vengeance. Captain Alara Vance became the first human ambassador to the Prometheus Compact. She spent the rest of her life building bridges between species, proving again and again that the choice humanity made in the Chamber of Arbitration had been the right one. Commander Chen finally retired to a small house on Earth, where he could see the stars from his window every night. He had carried the burden of survival for 50 years. Now, at last, he could rest. And in the archives of the Arbiters, a note was added to humanity's record. It was the first time in their endless history that the ancient beings had written such words. About any species, species classification, exceptional, threat assessment, none. Recommendation, learn from them. Far across the galaxy, on the bridge of a human ship, a young captain looked out at the stars and smiled. She was part of a new generation, born after the trial. Growing up in a galaxy transformed by choices made before she was born, she had heard the stories. She knew about the Prometheus, about the attack, about the 50 years of exile and the return. She knew about Captain Vance and Commander Chen, about the trial and the compact, but most importantly, she knew what those stories meant. They meant that when humanity had the power to burn the galaxy, they had chosen to light it instead. They meant that vengeance was not the only answer. They meant that the strongest thing a civilization could do was to choose mercy when hatred would have been easier. She set her course for distant stars. Carrying that lesson with her into the endless future, the Prometheus had returned with the power for vengeance. But its greatest victory was choosing something better, and the galaxy was forever changed because of it.